We met 2 days ago, which is like a year ago. Some of you were in that group. It was a fun discussion for me. So our discussion was mostly focused on trying to figure out how to help people overcome humiliation by gaining some degree of economic dignity. So the assumption is that part of the humiliation of billions, not millions, not hundreds of millions, but billions of people on this planet are humiliated every day because they can't feed their children. The mother can't send her children to school because it costs too much. The family's sick because they're drinking dirty water. All manner of disease surrounds and engulfs and buries the poor. And so I've been trying to figure out in my life, I have a day job as a professor teaching MBAs and lecturing at universities. But most of my time and energy, evenings and weekends, is focused on how to help empower the poor. And I want to start with this little story of Maria, this was 1999, after conflicts and disasters in Honduras, in Central America. I mobilized a group of students. We spent a semester training and preparing them to go to Honduras and work in the trenches with the poor. After Tegucigalpa, the capital, had been in many ways destroyed. And there was 92% unemployment, and many people were living under plastic tarps, tents from the UN or whoever. And we started this little organization called Help International, which is listed on your sheet there that I gave you the handout. And we said, let's go down and see if we can work with the people and have them determine what they need and figure out ways we might be able to help. We're not miracle workers. We don't have all the answers. We're just a bunch of young American college students who speak Spanish fluently, and we want to do some good. We knew that the big boys were in there before we got there. The UN, the World Bank, USAID, they were all trying to help, and they had promised billions of dollars and lots of experts. And we said, look, we're not like them. Let's just go to a place where we can find not many aid organizations and where there's not much money flowing in to help them. And let's figure out how we can make a difference as human beings with a little bit of training. If we're humble, if we do humble development, not big ego development. If we do small development, not big development. If we do minimal promises rather than lots of promises. If we do, instead of top down like the big boys do, we'll do bottom up. And let's see what difference we can make. So we went to this area. Some of my students were living in chicken coops. They each had to raise the money for themselves to go. And we raised, it's a funny story in a way. Maybe I should mention this. What do you think happened when I went to the dean of my business school, the Marriott School of Management? You know Marriott? You ever heard Marriott hotels? Yeah. The big boys, the big chain, all over the world. Yeah. So I was a professor at the Marriott School. They gave money for our MBA program, and they helped us build a very nice building. So I go to my dean and say, I feel impassioned to figure out a way to take some of my bright MBA students to the third world and see if they could make a little difference. I'd started a few NGOs by then. The dean thought I was insane, So I said, how much money could you offer out of all the funding you have to send a few students to Honduras? They're going to be volunteering. They're not going to receive a penny. They're going to raise a lot of the money themselves. But we want to do some village banking. We want to do some microcredit. We want to do some healthcare training. We want to, you know. So I explain this to the dean and say, how could we get about $30,000 from you? We know you've got the money. You're funding lots of projects. Could you give us $30,000? What do you think the dean said? What was his response?
You are crazy.
You are crazy. That was a literal quote. How you knew his exact words, I do not know, Evelyn, but that was it. And we don't do stuff like that. I said, well, I know you're funding students, and I know some of them go to Wall Street for the summer to do internships with IBM or HP, Hewlett-Packard, whatever. He said, yeah, we have money for those students, but we don't have money to send students to work with the poor. And that's when I began to realize we don't have a very great vision. His vision was a squint, you know, like this. And his Mecca was Wall Street. It was not the villages of the poor in Honduras. But we went ahead and did this. And I said, well, okay, so you won't fund it. I want to teach a class to prepare students. This was January of '99. I said, I want to teach a class, but I'm already teaching 4 big courses. Can I cancel one and start a new class? He said, what would it be? What would the title be? I said, How to Change the World. So, you know, he laughed again and said, you're crazy again. And I said, well, is there a way I could get out of teaching my 4th course and have some flexibility to invent this new course? And what do you think he said?
Yes.
Deans never say, oh yeah, you don't need to teach your class. What'd you do, get some wine down there? Avi, you're drinking already on me here, man. So of course he said, no, you can't drop the course. I said, okay, I'm gonna teach it for 2 hours Monday afternoon, late afternoon, after students have had their other courses before they go home. And I need a room. And he said, we'll give you a room. He said, but nobody's gonna show up, Warner. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. And then I asked him, how many students do you think at BYU, Brigham Young University, would take a course on how to change the world and plan to go to Honduras at the end of the semester and spend 1, 2, 3, 4 months volunteering in the heat and the poverty of Honduras? He said, you'll be lucky to get 5 or 6 students. That's just what you would say too. I can see it in your faces. Warner is going to be lucky if he gets those students. So the first Monday in January, we met. There were 2 students and myself. And then several more came in. And this was, for you young people, I know you can't imagine this. This was back in the day where we had no social media, 1999. We were just starting to get some internet stuff. So I printed off some flyers and posted them around campus saying, Radical Change Course, Social Entrepreneurship, How to Change the World. Want to learn about microfinance for the poor? And I plastered those in the library and some other parts of campus, the student union. And the next week, this is a 16-week semester. So the second week, there were about 10 people there. So I was feeling better. And the next week, there were about 20. And the next week, now they were past the deadline to register. They couldn't take the class for credit. The next week, another 10, and another 10. And by the end of the semester, there were 87 students in the class, including 4 professors who they told me they wanted to learn to do this stuff. And so we began this course, and they read, and we formed teams on Honduras culture and history, on how to teach business in Spanish, on logistics. Where should we go and why? And where's there a big need? And so we mobilized these groups of 5 or 6 students each to spend the semester learning all this stuff about their specific area. Another team was focused on fundraising, developing fundraising strategies so these kids could raise the money. And it was a marvelous thing. By the end of and then the last couple of weeks, these teams presented to everybody, here's the best airline to go on, here's what it's going to cost, here's how much you're going to need down there. And we figured out a budget that was $2,100 per student. So it was not like coming to Africa, it was a little cheaper. And here's how you raise the money, and here's what we're going to do. And at the end of the semester, of course, I had to explain to the dean we had 87 students. He was shocked. And that was with that, I was able to start teaching that same kind of course every semester for the rest of my career, from 99 to 2013, 14. And 46 students got the money and committed and went to Honduras. So it was pretty amazing. We funded, see, I can't remember now the numbers, but we funded several hundred new microcredit startups, microenterprises. The average family where they got a loan to start a little business that they designed with the students helping critique them and learning from them and exchanging ideas and getting them prepared to be a business person. I think the average family had 4 people in it. So usually it was a mom and 2 or 3 kids. Most of these women were so poor and they had no husband, and they were, victims of the humiliation that comes from lack of a career, lack of being able to feed their children 1 meal a day. And so this little project started to take off. And what I wanted to just share was this experience with Maria, who was about a 45-year-old woman. So the students went down and got it started, and then I came down with a couple of other students and one of my kids, and spent a few weeks there evaluating early on what's working, what's not, what do we need to change, where should we go here, whatever. This woman lived in a little town called Comayagua, and she was part of a group that we organized by knocking on doors and going to the refugee camps and asking who in this community is the poorest person, where's the poorest people live, and then we would find them and recruit them to come and be part of some training. And for every Saturday for a month, starting at 3 to 5 o'clock on Saturdays, this group would gather at Maria's. She had a little compound. Now, she just had one little shanty house. You know what a shanty is? A slum. In this compound, her floor was dirt. She had a house made out of some boards from orange crates and some mud logs, adobe bricks rather, that she'd had there. Thatched roof. And I thought she's an ideal candidate. And so I just remember the emotion I experienced when, after they'd all been trained and they had their business plans, their little simple startup enterprises, the day came when we wanted to graduate everybody, congratulate them. We gave them a little certificate, not as fancy as this conference certificate, but we signed it. For many of them, that was the only certificate they'd ever earned. They didn't have enough school, even elementary school. Excuse me, primary school. So it came time to celebrate, and I was there with the money I'd brought from the States. We'd start a bank account, and I brought all this money down to give the loans out after the first few groups. So it was a little group like this, and I stand up in front and tell them how courageous they are, how hard they've worked. They've been meeting now for 4 weeks and learning, and they've organized themselves as a village bank, a banco comunal, and they've elected so-and-so to be the president and the vice president and the treasurer and the secretary to help keep this going. And we're going to give them these loans. And I say, okay, who should get the first loan? And I pull out cash out of my pocket. And everybody said, oh, Maria first. She's the most wonderful person. She's been a mama to some of us. She's now a grandma to some of our children. We want her to get it. And I said, okay, Maria, and let's all clap. And she says, oh, no, I can't do it. And she's sitting in the back. I can't come up. I can't do this. I said, no, you've been prepared. You're ready to go. You've got a great business idea. You've learned what a loan is, and what interest is, and what principal is, and what a repayment process is. Things that she'd never heard about. She'd never been in a bank in her life, and now she was part of this empowered group of women, let's call them women bankers, micro bankers. And she just refused to come up. And finally, a couple of the young women students of mine that were there was a team of 6 of us, 3 guys, 3 girls. They went over and started talking to her in Spanish, encouraging her, and kind of dragging her up, unwilling. And I kept thinking, what's going on? Why is she like? I'd never met her before. And so, Maria, we're so happy you're here. You've worked hard, you've learned this, you've got a business plan. You and your kids are going to have a better life if you stay the course and keep working at this. And you'll be able to send them to school and give them 3 meals a day. And that I put the money in her hand, and she just let it drop to the ground. And she started crying. I said, whoa, what? I don't understand what this is about. And our students came and picked the money up and gave it back to me, and then I put it in her hand, kind of just held her hand like that. She was shaking and crying. And finally, she calmed down. I guess she was breathing, Helene's breathing process, and settled in a bit. And I said, Maria, what's wrong? Why don't you want this microloan? You don't have to take it, but we're offering it. You've worked for it. And she said, oh, señora, she's speaking in Spanish. I am just a poor Indian woman. I am not worth $100. And it blew my mind. I started getting tears in my eyes. I still do when I think about this story. As I tried to tell her, no, you're worth more than all the money in the world. She said, I never saw $100. I've never been in a bank. I'm afraid if I went to a bank, they'd kill me. That was her level of understanding about banking. So it was a very touching experience. And out of that, we started giving these loans out, and gave out several hundred new startups. They benefited about 800 people in a couple of hundred families there. So at that point, I realized there was a power in this process of microfinance, microcredit, that can help people achieve a level of dignity and self-worth that they never got being born in this village, or being a citizen of that country, or being a woman in that community, with or without education, with or without a brick house or a mud house or a wooden hut. And so I kind of see this movement, if it's done well, as a way to help people develop a sense of self-worth. So as we had our discussions, one of the themes coming out of it was that dignity is raising standards. And Avi brought that point up. Do you want to just kind of share your reaction or your meaning of that?
Yeah, I'll try to explain what I mean. Well, one of the ways to understand or to look at dignity, it's only one of the ways, because we're talking about a very, very composed, a notion that is composed of many, many factors. So one of the ways is, if I come to people and I just help them to see their capabilities, to believe in themselves, and to raise themselves. That's what you are doing with Maria.
Yeah.
I think that when you can show high standards and tell people, especially people who are not very successful, who are not very in high positions in life, but you can show them that they can, not that you will do it for them, but that there are higher standards, that they can achieve there, and they can change their mind and their behaviors and their concepts, and they can find themselves in a better position than they are now. You know, there are many stories about teachers. Teachers who come to places, maybe not Honduras, but I don't know who knows the story of Escalante, a teacher who came to a suburb of Los Angeles, very, very children from a very low class, and he told them, you are the best. All the time he told them, you are the best. I want you to remember one thing, you are the best. And those children who were dropped out from schools succeeded in mathematics. He was a teacher for math, and were accepted to the best universities in America. I'm using this film in my workshops, and this is a way that you can believe, you know, human dignity is not only compassion, it is, or generosity, or solidarity, or it's also something that can show you that you can do something and do it better and succeed. You need help, we'll help you. We will not do it instead of you. You will do it, but you
Will not do it for you.
not for you.
You've got to do it. Is that what you're saying?
You've got to do it, and we'll give you help and support,
Mm-hmm.
everything, but you can.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you can.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you can. And it happens. You know, there is also the Pygmalion effect that works, that you show people, and this is what I mean by raising standards.
Yeah, that's great.
Is it clear?
Makes sense. Makes good sense. So it's a little movement that's begun to roll out. So we've been in Honduras 12 years. I think 30,000 loans. And to see now some of them, those little kids in those streets when we started that are now in high school, and in a few cases going on to college already. It's amazing to see it. I think I mentioned in the group, so each of the women in that bank, that community bank, received a $100 loan to be paid back in 3 months. Well, I guess it was 4 months, $25 a month. And we would meet with them every week for an hour for them to pay back $5 a week, plus a little interest, 10 cents or a quarter, 25 cents or whatever.
What is the rate of interest?
What's that?
How much percentage?
I think it was 6%. And I learned long ago that I didn't want to give subsidized loans, subsidized interest rates, because then people, when they get out of the bank, they can't deal with the real interest rate in the real bank when they get out of their community bank, their village bank. And so we want to be realistic. This is not a gift. There's going to be a financial fee charged. We want you to learn how to manage that and manage your money and look at alternatives in the future so you get a decent interest rate. And the other thing of that, and I don't know, you all know what microcredit is, right? Do I need to explain you some of that, or do you get it? You know what I mean? Yeah? But it's among those 30 women, we had them form solidarity groups within the 30. So maybe the 5 or 6 of you here would be one solidarity group. You would form the group with people out of those 30 people who you trusted, who you respected, who you think are honest and hardworking. Because when we give the loans, we're going to give each of that group of you 5, let's say, $100. You're committing to pay back your $100 plus some interest, and you're going to be responsible for the $100 each other member of your group is owed. Okay, so our father Jean here, Mark, if Mark misses a payment, if he's not going to be here next Saturday for that hour meeting, he's going to tell the other 4 or 5, I can't make it, but I have the money. Here's the money. Take it for me. Because he wants to be perceived as someone with dignity who's responsible with the money and responsible for paying it back on time, the day it's due, with the interest. And when you, as a group of 5 or 6, finish paying off that $100 loan, what we tell you is then we'll give you a $200 loan if you want to grow your business. So Maria got, I think it was a little cage and grew some, bought some chickens and started her little chicken business, little poultry business. And when I went back there about a month later, she had paid off part of her loan, about half of it. She'd paid ahead, and she had 20 chickens or so. And the next year I went back, she had 200 chickens. She had a huge chicken coop from here to that wall. She had 3 other women she had helped fund start chicken businesses themselves. And they were selling the eggs and selling the chickens, selling the meat. And it became an amazing little example. And that's just one illustration. But 2 years later, she had received over $2,000 in one loan. And when she paid that back, she wanted $4,000. And we said, we don't have that. We're a little Help International. But we had the record of every payment she'd made, every loan she got, every meeting she attended. And so we went with her to the bank downtown and gave her, she was able to get a $4,000 loan. And I haven't seen her now. It's been 5 or 6 years. But I suspect she's got a little empire. and she's channeling all the chickens to McDonald's and KFC and all the corporations. So that's kind of the overarching vision here. How you can use this notion of some simple, small amounts of capital for the poor that have never had that small amount as a strategy for helping generate capacity and skills and competence and a sense of dignity among themselves. One of the big concerns I have with some of this microfinance stuff is, like everything in the world, there's good and bad. There's some MFIs, microfinance institutions, that move from being an NGO to help the poor and to serve the poorest of the poor. They move from that to becoming a revenue-generating NGO. And then they incorporate as a business. And then they go public and sell their business in the stock market of Mexico, where this happened with an organization called Compartamos. And it had been around a long time, but it drifted from its original mission and became a capitalist institution that made the top management of this once NGO, made them all millionaires in one single day on the stock market. So it's got to be a process of collaboration of the NGO and the community, other community organizations, and the indigenous people themselves, all being having an egalitarian relationship. The soul of microcredit has got to be based on ethical lending principles. We've got to focus on why we're doing this and keep that in mind all the time, or it'll just become another financial institution. You know, a lot of credit unions, when they started out to help the poor. Now many of them are banks, and they're focused more on their bottom lines. So how do you ensure ethics? How do you create a culture of shared responsibility and of staying focused on the neediest and the poorest? How can we make a sense of ownership exist in this village bank. What's amazing to me is, of the thousands that I've worked with now, people end up owning their own little bank. And they make the decisions, and they change the leadership, and they determine what the interest rate ought to be, and they decide how many new members they can bring in from year to year. And so it becomes a process of self-management. Final point I'll make, and then you may have a couple comments, is, to me, poverty can be a form of genocide, economic genocide, maybe not killing the human being, but killing the person, the personal, killing the heart, killing the mind. We just had this great experience here of going to the Genocide Museum. I'm hoping that down the road we will be able to put poverty in a museum, and that, you know, when our grandchildren and your children and my great-grandchildren, that the day will come when in my town we will have a little museum that shows what poverty was on the planet, and we can take our kids there and they can say, "Grandpa, what's poverty? What are they talking about there?" And we can say, there was a terrible time in the past when the rich nations had the wealth and the poor nations had nothing, and there was exploitation, and people were depressed, and people felt humiliated, and they felt no worth. And those days are now gone, and we've erased, maybe not poverty per se, but extreme poverty. We've erased poverty from the earth. And that day we'll all have another meeting with the network in Utah, in Salt Lake City, and I'll take you all over to our poverty museum, and we'll be able to reflect on what we learned here in Rwanda to reduce our humiliation. Final comment, stories, questions, reactions. Do you think this is possible? One of my hopes is you'll go home and you'll talk a little about some of this stuff. We've got so many things we've discussed, but some of you might think about, how could I start a little microcredit project? I'm not a millionaire, but Warner did it with a bunch of students. And maybe we could try something in our village or in our town or in the poor section of our community, and experiment, try some things out, and see what works. Yes, ma'am.
I'm so glad that you highlight and emphasize the ethics there.
Yeah.
I was sharing with you before that I was extremely happy when the microfinance movement with Mohammed Yunus started, and that I think people were not prepared for the pressure to go exactly this unethical path that you described.
Yeah.
I think people are unaware of the pressure that exists there, or that builds up. So I just want to share, and
Sure.
shared it before.
Thank you.
With you. I shared with Warner that, and perhaps I can start with another example. You remember the economic crash at 2008? And it started with very good intentions, namely that everybody should own a house. More people should own a house in the United States.
Yeah.
To lift them up, to empower them, to give them the feeling, exactly as Avi said, to give them the feeling that they can. This was the background of the economic crisis in 2008. Wanting to lift people up. And what happened then? Then these good intentions were hijacked, you could say. And they were hijacked by this pressure that comes from outside. Then, as you all know, loans were pushed on people who could not pay back the loan and interest. And then this was packaged, and then it was sold further, and banks made huge gains until about 2008, when this bubble crashed. And what was the result? These people did not only lose their houses, they lost their anchoring in dignity.
Yeah.
They had
Yeah.
to unlearn to link dignity with the owning of a house. They had learned, oh, I'm a dignified person, I have a house. I own a house. This gives me dignity. So they lost the house and they had to find another way to define their dignity. So it was a double humiliation. You said
Yeah.
I think that was a very good expression.
Mm-hmm.
The result was a massive double humiliation. It started with good intention, it ended in massive double humiliation that even brought world economics into problem.
Exactly.
And this is what happens with microfinance at the moment. I talk with the people here, and I ask again and again, you know, how is it? Is there no microfinance that is not a shark, not a predator? No. They say it's like that. You get the loan, you don't get enough time to pay it back, you get help, and then the interest is too high, and then you see in the news houses are being sold, land is being sold, you have the list, these and these people could not pay back. In the villages, you know, in the poor villages. But, you know, I haven't checked that myself, I haven't seen it with my own eyes. Perhaps I managed to go there to this village, they invited me to go there to one of these villages. So, but I have seen with my own eyes the situation last year when we had our conference in northern Thailand. And there are beautiful hills like here, and there are so-called minorities living there. And I came and I saw the beautiful hills. I was there in 1981 and it was so green. Now it was black. Why is everything black? What is making this landscape so black? Okay, there were plastic covering flowers. And all the farmers, and I asked again and I spoke with them, they had been offered, you know, some loans and free gifts, namely seeds for flowers, and the promise that they could then buy, you know, sell these flowers and they would get profit, and then they could buy a motorcycle and in that case it was flowers in these hills in one area, in others is other cash crops. And they went there. 5 years later, and it was amazing, all farmers are in debt, all are intoxicated, have high levels of toxins in their blood from the pesticides that they also got as a gift. They don't have the money to go to the hospital. So the result is that total destruction. Total destruction. It starts with the offer of a loan and gifts of seeds. And the only exception was one village, a Karen village, where I spent 3 days to really understand it, a Karen village, where the head of the village had resisted this pressure. He was therefore called the lazy man by his wife. And 30 years ago it started, this pressure, with planting cash crop to get a motorcycle, get a TV. And so he had resisted. And in Karen mythology there is a story that the hero is the lazy man who does not really jump on the bandwagons of the others, and by refusing to do that, at the end he wins. So it's a kind of Karen legend. So after 30 years, the result is that all the other villagers and villages are in problems. The village is decomposing, it's rising domestic violence, rising drug consumption, except this area of the village where this man, the lazy man, is kind of the elder. He's now 86, I think. So we were sitting with him, I videotaped it, everything's on the website. And they have completely stopped cash crops, and they live from the things they plant. They are the only ones that are healthy. And they explain the tragedy of that is happening around. There's also an element of education in there, because there's a government, government has schools there in the villages, and all the children are obliged to go to school. What happens? They go to school, they learn to sit still on a chair, to listen to a teacher. They don't learn how to go with a buffalo, how to plant that. They don't know how to maintain a village, a healthy village life. So after 12 years, they say, when they come out of school, they are useless in the village. They have to go into town to try to find a job. Family decomposes, drug, and, as I said, domestic violence. So the village life is decomposed. You know, they learn to march in the schoolyard, some military music, to listen to, you know, patriotic songs. This is what is school and what is education. And at the end, their social fabric is destroyed and their health is destroyed and damaged. So they founded something they call the lazy school because of the legend of the lazy man. So they said, okay, let's try to see whether this village can be a school. And you will see the interview with the first student of the lazy school from America, a young man from America. And he sits there and explains, okay, I come from America where everything is decomposing and the middle class is, you know, you can't as a young man expect that you rise up like your parents. You know, you find an environment where you don't want to be and you don't know what to do. And he came into that village, was living there for the past 2 months, I think, and learning everything what you do in a village. And he said, I'm the first student of the lazy school, and let us develop that idea. You know, how can you avoid uprooting children from village life, putting them on chairs, letting them march, and then, you know, being unable to live a village life at the end, and only wanting a motorcycle and television and going to the city. And how can you avoid that? And then the idea was to bring computers into the village life, not to take the children out of village life, but bring something, you know, bring education into the village life and combine it with learning how to be, maintain a good village life, to combine that. So this was their vision and their dream, but it's very difficult. Karen activists, just when I left, one disappeared and was in prison and didn't appear again. So this initiative is very, very fragile. So just to share with you that this pressure, these good intentions, and you stand for that, and therefore I'm so glad, because you know also the amount of pressure that is there, that you would have to keep in mind and to be extremely non-naive, and to protect your initiative. And as I said, I go around on this planet and I see disaster. So I would be very, very, very careful to connect dignity with getting money, having money, getting a house, owning something, and to bring dignity through that. So people have to learn, like in this village, this old man, he brought dignity to this village in different ways. And this is, I think, the way forward, and one has to be absolutely critical and absolutely aware of the huge pressure to hijack this, like the subprime crisis in the US was hijacked, or the good intention of that everybody should be happily owning a house. What a good idea. It's wonderful. And now we see the same thing here. And so therefore you standing there and standing for ethics in that attempt, it's more than important. And it's hugely difficult, hugely difficult to stand by the ethical path that you described.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that insight. And we're way beyond time, so thank you all. We'll move to the next. Is Avi next?
I
Or?
want to say something.
Oh.
I think that the difference is between giving an idea and dealing with helplessness. And the idea is to help people to get out of the helplessness, and not to put on them an idea.
Right. And to in a way make them dependent on a new drug in a way.
Okay. A new drug, yes.
Yeah.
You are talking about finding a way out of helplessness.
Yeah, for them.
For them,
They've got to get out, and there's no promise of a big house or whatever.
There's no solution.
But I think small, innovative strategies with high ethical standards and missions of these NGOs, just like there's good banks and there's bad banks, there's good governments and there's bad. There's lots of stories on all sides. My work, for example, I never want to work with the governments. You're saying, well, the Thai government came in and did all this. See, I say that's failure from the start. Big programs collapse. it's better to be local, innovative, small, experiment, try things out, and grow carefully, and not create the expectation I'm going to live in a big mansion with colored TV and all that stuff, but rather, can I have a good quality of life and a little garden where I've learned to produce for myself and my children, and be able to send my kids to school. It's a pretty simple starting strategy for me. So anyway, thanks to all of you.